What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to the land of Reckless Logicc. Please make sure you guys pop that like button, hit the subscribe button, and please, please, please smack that notification bell so do not miss any more posts from me. Let's get straight into this video. Alrighty, guys, you guys already know why we're here. We are here because we're going to talk about the season of Baddies. Recently, the season finale has aired, so I want to come in front of you guys and have a chit chat, and I'm gonna discuss my thoughts and my opinions, and we're just gonna talk about the things before the reunion hits the airwaves. Now, I will say this, baby, that reunion, when I tell you, it looks like they're turning each other every which way but loose. I am here for it, and I will be tuning in to see who gets mollywopped and who gets dog walked. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. Now, let's start with the cast. My brief thoughts on the cast. I do want to start headstrong with this idea that I have been seeing circulating on social media with this debate on whether or not Natalie should be on the cast or she should continue to just be behind the scenes. Now, here's the thing. The issue is that I'm kind of 50-50 with it in terms of my personal opinion. But however, I was talking to it with my friend, and he's kind of leaning towards the idea and the thought process of he prefers or he doesn't mind Natalie being on the cast because he knows that, for one, she is attention seeking. So of course, being in front of the camera is something that she's going to want to do. And he feels as if she's a really good middle ground for the show in terms of there's always going to have to be someone to push the storylines or the lack thereof, push the storylines, and there's always going to have to be a Switzerland on the cast. So which means that when both sides are beefing, there's always going to have to be someone to bring them together. And honestly, in my personal opinion, I feel like she can still do that, but I just feel like she can do it and just pop in and out in terms of you could be behind the scenes, but then when the girls are going to bookings, you can make appearances throughout. That's just my personal opinion. I'm just saying. Now, the thing is, too, is that people like myself as well, we're not really I'm not too much of a fan of Natalie being on the cast and she can't get her ass whooped. Because my thing is this, if you are also an executive producer and a cast member and you want to be on the cast and play an active role in front of these cameras and you want to do your BS, also know that what also comes with that as well, which means me sticking my foot up and turning you every which way but loose in front of this camera as well. Now, on the flip side of that, my friend argued that he understands why, and he understands the approach of Natalie not being able to be touched because of her being executive producer, because she's put a lot of work into the game and she's been doing this since season 4. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I understand all of that, but at the end of the day, if you are willing to be in front of this camera, then that also means you're not exempt from what also comes along with the show. And one can argue, because this is another thing that I was thinking about too, one can argue that if that's the case, that may not have too much of anything to do with Natalie. That may have something to do with the other ladies, because truth be told, you have Rolly, who's not scared to turn Natalie every which way but loose. But some of the other ladies, I'm gonna say they're intimidated. Forget it. I'm gonna say it. They are scared to go there with Natalie because they want to be on more seasons of Baddies. So that may not be so much of an issue or a problem that maybe push more on Natalie, or I just maybe that needs to be something that needs to be pushed upon more of the ladies of having more of a backbone, because even with this season, when it came down to Big Lex and Ivory turning each other every which way but loose because of Natalie swapping the names as a prank, once Ivory and Big Lex found out that it was Natalie that swapped the names and it wasn't any other ladies in the cast, they weren't willing to go the extra mile as in turn her every which way but loose. I'm just saying. But let me continue. Let's get into this hot mess. Let's get into Miss Summer Bummer. Girl, I'm not gonna lie. When Summer first came on the scene, I did like Summer initially, but as time progressed, she really irked my spirit because I felt like she was doing way too much. I felt like she was doing the absolute most, and then I noticed that it was on a consistent basis, to the point that I personally felt, before I got confirmation, I personally felt as if she was willing to go the extra mile. And I'm gonna even say, when it comes down to Zeus Network, there is a pocket for certain personality types. So if you are extra and if you do a lot or do the most, there is a pocket for that. Because if you do too much, like Summer has done, especially with the example that we recently seen on the Baddies Africa auditions, where she was completely out of line for saying what she said to that one participant, and then she got a lot of backlash for it. I just felt as if Summer did too much, and I also felt as if she is just weird, in my personal opinion, and the things that she would do. Now, I do understand this is a show. I do understand that if you are a cast member, when it's time, when them cameras get to rolling, you are clocked in. So I do understand that point, but I do feel as if that I really wish, and this is a personal opinion, I really wish you would have toned it down just a little bit and stayed in the pocket. But however, hey, I'm not paying her bills so much. Now, let's get into one of my biggest disappointments, Big Lex. I'm going to be honest, I loved Big Lex when she first came on in the scene, because initially I only had some sort surface level background knowledge of who Ivory was. And so when that first episode came about and they were on the sprinter, and Ivory got to turn the Summer every which way but loose, and then she started to swing off on Big Lex, and Big Lex was not backing down, I lived for it, because from what I've known of Ivory before Zeus, from what I've heard, she was the big bad wolf and she was the big bully on the block. And so I lived when I seen Big Lex not willing to back down from her. You get what I'm saying? But I'm gonna tell you what my issue comes in when it comes down to Big Lex. Now, the moral of the story when it comes down to Big Lex is that she's a huge contradiction. And the reason why I'm saying this, it's because, Big Lex, you can't say that you don't like bullying, or you can't say that Jayla doesn't like to fight people her size, but she fought Rolly, who at the time is bigger than her, and even to this day, bigger than her. She fought Kali, who is bigger than her, and then called her a bully because of the situation that she had with Biggie, even though Biggie loves to run her mouth a lot. And then also the situation that she had with Gretchen, when Gretchen likes to say the N-word and be completely out of pocket. So, I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know. It's just a contradiction. And when it came down to her talking about this whole thing about the bullies and all these other things, and her trying to, quote unquote, take a stand for people who are bullies, but she stayed mute whenever her best friend or her friend Summer Bummer began to run her mouth and say a lot of the things that she said out of her mouth. Now, I do understand that there are going to be times that if you are on a show with a cast members and you guys are close, there are obviously probably going to be conversations that are going to happen behind the scenes. Obviously, there are going to be conversations that the general public is not going to be privy to. I get that. I understand that. But it is a huge contradiction when you are not willing to call Summer out or call some of the other girls out and have the same passion behind it if this is something that you're standing up for. But it just so happens that you are claiming that it happened with Jayla, but yet when you see those exact same situations manifest elsewhere, you don't really say nothing, in my personal opinion. So hopefully for me, because I really tried and I really wanted to like Big Lex. Now, because she's pretty and she know how to fight, and I lived for it. And hopefully when she's on Baddies Africa, I can see a different side to Big Legs, because I really do want to like her in my personal opinion. But let's move on. Girl, let's get into Bad Dolly. Bad Dolly, in my personal opinion, did nothing but get turned every which way but loose. She got her ass beat by Pretty P. She got beat up by Taseki. She got beat up by Pretty P multiple times. I had to say it again because it was multiple rounds and multiple times. She got beat up. Who else she fought that got beat up? Oh, she got beat up by Jayla. Girl, I don't know where y'all found Bad Dolly. And to be honest, she's a very pretty girl, and I really thought that she was gonna come much harder than that. Now, keep in mind, this is before the reunion. So she probably did do her big one when it came down to the rounds that she did with Taseki and all those other things. So hopefully I get to see more of what she's claiming that she's about. Because honestly, she was always hurt. It was either she was always in the hospital or on her way to the hospital in terms of Bad Dolly. And so with this season, I felt like she did not have too much of a good season, only because she was always hurt and she was very fragile. But let's move on. Let's get into Big Ivory. I'm gonna be honest, I was pleasantly surprised when it came down to Ivory. I wasn't sure what I was going to get with Ivory because I've heard and saw some clips of how she was on Now That's TV and how she was or presented herself over on that network. So I really didn't know too much of what to expect, but I was willing to accept her for what she was, either like it or dislike it, to be completely honest with you. So in terms of Ivory, I actually liked Ivory. I liked Ivory because I liked the fact that she had her own mind. Now, there were some things in terms of the season where that first day, they just started to fight each other for a storyline. I wasn't really too much of a fan of that, especially once I realized that it was something that was made up. I wasn't really a fan of that. I feel like we should keep the drama authentic, and producers, if you can't create a storyline with the group, then what are you producing? You produce a show. So you make the show. You produce the show. But when it came down to Ivory, I liked Ivory. I liked the fact that she was willing to get into the paint, but I also liked the fact that she had her own mind, but I also like this difference, apparently from what the people are saying, a different side to Ivory that other people probably didn't get a chance to see. That she is a nice girl, that she does have a soft, sentimental side to her, and she's not always rah, 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 dog walking you down the street 24/7. Now, let's get into my girl, Jayla. I'm going to be honest, I love Jayla. And it's weird because the more people hate Jayla, it's the more that I love her. I'm going to be honest with you. Now, I will say this, and I do agree, in terms of the situation that she had with Big Lex, that altercation in Hawaii, baby, Jayla, love you down, boost, but you lost the fight. In my personal opinion, but you lost the fight. You win some, you lose some, but you were still willing to get in the paint. Now, I will say this. The situation that she had with Big Lex, this really calls out the hypocrisy of the viewers, because on last season when she was clocked in and she was doing her big one in terms of Meatball, Kylie, what's the other girl name? Biggie, Gretchen, etc., 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 and then acting a plum fool at their reunion and where she lost her tooth. People were saying that she was doing too much. But then now she's coming into the next following season more reserved and she's not doing enough. And then Natalie was calling her out saying that, yeah, we're going to put you on the chopping block, which on surface level, it would make sense because Jayla wasn't really doing really much of anything. But to be completely honest, Natalie, the reason how I knew for me personally that you kind of call a little bit, that call was BS because for one, Jayla is somebody that has been in the game in terms of being a bad girl for a long time, just like you, but you were much longer, but still she put in much more work in terms of being an OG. Two, it's the fact that you're going to disrespect Jayla of being an OG and putting in that much work and putting her on the chopping block to fight Summer. And whoever wins goes home. And then once she turns Summer every which way but loose, Summer doesn't go home. I can see both sides of it. Entertained, but at the same time, it's like, girl, what's going on here? And another reason how I knew that call was kind of more of like kind of on the BS type side of things. It's because the same thing can be said about Taseki at that time. Because at that time, once she got into a bad Dolly and stuff, and once the Krishan episode and that era kind of came and passed, Taseki was smooth sailing. We didn't really hear from her like that. We seen her. We'll probably hear from her here and there, but she wasn't really giving anything. People are already complaining about her not having any personality to contribute to the show. So that's how I felt in my personal opinion, that it was a bit, you wasn't really being completely honest about your stance, because if you was 100% honest about your stance, you would have applied that stance to multiple people in and on the cast, in my personal opinion. So in my personal, it is what it is. Now, in terms of the whole thing with Big Lex, it was weird for Big Lex to come after Jayla, but we all understand this is a show. This is a show that newbies are going to come on. They want to solidify their spot. And when it comes down to Big Lex, she felt as if Jayla was going to be the person to solidify her spot. But once I got a chance to see other videos and media posts and all these things of the Ivory and Pretty P and Jazz and all of the girls explaining that first night, them getting on the bus and fighting each other was all staged, and them being instructed to go after certain cast members, it makes perfect sense. You get what I'm saying? And so the thing when it came to Big Lex and Jayla, it was a disappointment in terms of Big Lex. I really was not here for it. And I'm also not here for my girl Jayla having an outro like that, in my personal opinion. But let's continue. Let's get into the lackluster Zeus Network editing abilities, because let's talk about how Zeus Network, the editing over on Baddies, the editing over on the other shows, girl, they need to do much better and keep context and the lack of continuity, because if you're not keeping up with what's going on outside of the show, if you're not keeping up with the receipts and the back and forth on Twitter and back and forth on Instagram, back and forth on social media spaces, and not realizing that the girls that met up outside the show and all these other things, if you're not keeping up with all that, a lot of that context and a lot of the reasons why some girls may have issues, you're going to be completely lost within the show, because there should be no reason why that Mel has been part of the show, at least the last episode on the season finale or the episode before that, and us not knowing that she also was the same person that snatched Ivory's wig earlier in the season. She should have been previewed then, so then when she came into the season, the last 2 episodes, I want to say, it never would have been a shock. And it'd have been much better to give more context to the viewers who don't watch Now That's TV to know why do Mel and Ivory have beef. But we're talking about Zeus Network here. Now, I will say this, especially when it came to the reunions, because I've noticed this. I'm going to say the last reunion or the reunion before that. I forgot exactly which one it was. They are getting better with showing more of the receipts, because in those reunions, sometimes, like I said, if you didn't know what the hell was going on, you were just lost and you just knew girls were just sitting there fighting. And some of the fights were very much chaotic in terms of it didn't make sense why the girls are fighting. It's like y'all weren't even on the show together. And what seems to be y'all issue, because the last time we saw y'all was on good terms. And then a lot of the times too, it's hard to get even a dialogue out of the ladies, because all they want to do is turn each other every which way but loose. But I guess they also forget that we're also shooting a show, and which means that you're also going to need to have dialogue, so there's context to why you guys are at odds, especially if these things happen outside of the show. But there have been, I will say, at least in terms of the reunion, they've been getting better in terms of showing receipts and trying to keep the audience update. Well, let me continue. Now, let's talk about the state of reality TV. I'm going to say it like this. In terms of shows like Zeus, now I do understand that fighting on reality TV it does hold a place for reality TV, but I do believe that reality TV has taken a turn only because it focuses so much on the fighting, and the difference between focusing on the fighting, except for compared to back in the day when they focused on the personalities, which made a huge difference in the production, because then you did not, as producers, you did not have to produce a show. All you had to do was allow the personalities to roam, and the entertainment was going to manifest regardless if you guys had too much of a hand to do with the situation or not. They were going to manifest. And the issue that happens when you focus too much on the fighting ability, but you don't have any focus on the personality or the uniqueness of these girls or these influencers, people, etc. It's when you manifest a person like Taseki, which I like Taseki, but she does. If she's not fighting, she's not really giving anything, to be completely honest with you. In my personal opinion, she's not really giving much. But when you had people like back in the day that focused on the personality, and they could also fight, or their personality was so good that they didn't always need to fight or have to fight. It was entertaining without the actual physical violence. But keep in mind, y'all, we're talking about Zeus Network here. You had people like New York Tiffany Pollard, who personality was through the roof, and one of the pioneers for reality TV. It also showed the girls how to get things started. You also had people like Nene Leakes, who also was a very important, who played a very important role in the development of or involved evolution of reality TV. That the personalities were enough. Now, some of these girls some of these people that I'm going to name can fight, and some of them can be very questionable. But it does not take away from the impact of moving the storylines along, and also the impact that they had on their shows. We can also get into Miss Kenya Moore, to where some may argue she can and cannot fight. I love my Kenya down, but some can argue she can and cannot. I'm going to be honest with you. But the personality, the wittiness, the intelligence, and all of these things also helped move the shows, and also helped with the personality, and people didn't get bored looking at paint dry on the wall with some of these girls that, for honestly, Zeus Network and also other networks, they focus too much on the fighting, which, okay, cool, it's cool or whatever. But however, once you guys get out of that, what's going to hold viewership and what's going to hold the views? Because we can also talk about this. Yes, the fighting is good. Okay, cool. The fighting is okay, cool. But what's gonna happen as time progresses? You're gonna want to go to the next level. You're gonna want to go to the next level after that, and after that, you want to go to the next level, which means that at some point you had the heavy hitters like a Krishan Rock. Then you had the heavy hitters like a Jay Lamela. Then you start to get the heavy hitters like Taseki. Then you start to get, hold up real quick, 1 second. Girl, my alarm head was going off over here. Now, but another thing too is that then the next level after Saseki, you want to get someone like a Billy Barbie. Let me tell you something. Ain't nobody got time for that. Who got time to be windmilling on her? When I tell you Billy Barbie turned them girls every which way but loose on Now That's TV, and also turned them girls every which way but loose on Africa, the auditions, baby. At this point, it's only gonna get to a whole new level every single time, and you're only gonna have nothing but straight hitters, to the point someone's really, really gonna get hurt. Someone's really, really gonna get hurt. And then now, especially when it comes down to Zeus Network, now you got to worry about more lawsuits, because Zeus Network has already been under fire, but people really don't talk about it. But the way that Zeus Network is operating and going, oh, their downfall is coming to a city near you. Now, you also have people like Tammy Roman, who's very spicy, whose attitude was very much top tier, whose personality was out through the roof, and also could fight. Now, some can argue that she couldn't or couldn't. I'm gonna let y'all decide that, but the point still stands. Same thing with my girl Larissa Boots, very spicy. And then, but when you had these different personalities interacting, it made for a good show, and fighting was not always involved, and it also kept viewership outside of when the girls or people weren't physically fighting. So that's really in terms of state of reality TV. And I will say this, and then I'm gonna get up out of here, is that there was a distinction and a difference between the Bad Girls Club and Baddies. I know that the Baddies is a variation of Bad Girls Club. Understood. But I'm going to say, in terms of Bad Girls Club, what made Bad Girls Club good as well, it's because, one, they focused on the personalities, because call a spade, and as everybody knows who's ever watched Bad Girls Club, all them girls over there could not fight. Fallon could not fight. Ashley, BGC9, could not fight. Mimi, God bless her soul, BGC8, could not fight. Who else? Season 10, Janae, she could not fight. But a lot of these other girls, personalities, some gave more than others. Julie could not fight, but the personalities and the way they operated made good for good storylines. You get what I'm saying? So the difference is that they focused on the personality, comparatively speaking, compared to Baddies, and the fighting was put to the forefront. They wasn't supposed to fight, which means they had the consequence of being sent home if they were fighting, and especially if the fight got too bad, they got sent home, which made good for storylines and also entertainment, because when the girls or the people, whoever got into conflict, they would try to do other things to agitate the other people in the house. Compared to Baddies, y'all just fighting. And at some point, especially when some of these girls and some of these people they get to fighting, and the fights don't even be that good. So that's really all I have to say in terms of my thoughts on Baddies. The reunion's about to air next week. So I'm just going to be on the lookout for that. But I'm going to talk to you guys later. You guys be careful. And you guys